Good taste, man.
Getting while doing that. Break it.
You might not want to zoom in. You might not even want that feature now. There's Becky.
Good afternoon. I want to remind everyone to please silence your phones. If you have not done so already, go ahead and check on that. Well, hi there. I'm Dr. Frederick McCain. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of The Turning Point. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out today. I want to thank the Roberts family, Lawrence, and my team for putting this all together. I'm not going to speak, but I will be introducing everyone as they come up. All right. So first I'd like to bring up John Roberts. Ah, there you are.
Just like
Come on up. Just like that.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I knew that I was going to have an opportunity to speak, but I didn't plan anything. And if you were there last year at the memorial, then you probably heard a lot of what I had to say. So I really think mostly what I wanted to say on behalf of my family is thank all of you for being here. I think it goes without saying that how much we love Mike and how much he loved us. And I think for the most part we've been doing pretty good. I haven't been crying every day. Last year I was cried out for about a week, so I was able to speak. But this is kind of making it all new again for us. But just the fact that you all came here today for this ceremony and have contributed to this project, which was very important to Mike, and that's why we're all here. There's nothing that he enjoyed more doing than helping somebody who wanted to help themselves, and he would always try to point that way. And so obviously the Turning Point, he spent some time here. A lot of you know more about that than I do, but I spent a lot of time on the phone with Mike because I live in California, and so he would tell me about things that he was working on and what was important to him. And he had the same kind of love for me and my problems and things that I was trying to work my way through. And if you know Mike, then you know the type of patience and persistence and just that sort of steady love that he had and that wouldn't go away. And so that's really all I want to say primarily, is to thank you for being here. And I hope that, really, this is monumental to us. It will, it sort of etches in our memory and will cauterize for us, what part of what was important in Mike's life. And I think the other thing that I want to say about that is, of course, most of us have lost someone we love before, and our life has to move on. And what his legacy is, you know, is kind of up to us. You know, like what his life will mean now is up to us to absorb, to own, and to bring to fruition the presence that he had to us, and to take all that was good and try to move on with it, you know. And certainly that's what I aim to do, you know, is to remember the good things and the good advice that he gave me, and the qualities that I appreciated in him, to try to emulate them. So thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, John. Next, Mike's wife, Peggy, come on up.
Wow, lots of people. And it's really cool to see so many people that he cared so much about, all in the same room. Thank you for being here. When I heard that Turning Point was going to have a dedication in honor of my husband, I immediately asked if I could say a few words. Not sure why, because I'm not a fan of public speaking, and I often struggle to find the right words to express myself. I just knew that this was something I needed to do. First, I'd like to personally thank all the donors for their contribution in Michael's honor. He would have been overwhelmed by the support that so many people have given to Turning Point. I will never be able to thank you enough. Secondly, I'd like to thank all of those involved in the fundraising and today's dedication. Without your efforts, today wouldn't have been possible. And another thing that I hadn't planned on saying anything about, but I heard on the way in here that there were 21 riders this morning. That's phenomenal. That might be a record. I think it is. Most importantly, I asked to speak because I wanted to tell everyone why this place meant so much to Michael. I met my husband in junior high, and I knew immediately that he had a kind soul. I could see it in his smile and his eyes. We quickly became friends, but little did either of us know he was already struggling with addiction. Luckily, he had already discovered the natural high from being an athlete, and this gave him something positive to focus on. We continued our friendship throughout high school. We talked on the phone almost every night, even if one of us was dating someone else. He was friends with the athletes and the hardcore partiers, but I wasn't a part of either of those groups. Although we rarely saw each other outside of school, we formed a special bond and were always there for each other. One morning I came to school and I ran into Michael in the hall shortly after I arrived. I spoke with him like it was any other day, but he immediately interrupted me and said, "Haven't you heard? Chris died last night." It turned out there was a small party near my house the night before. I heard the sirens, but little did I know that Michael and two of his friends witnessed one of their best friends die from a drug overdose. At this point, I was still clueless that my future husband had a problem with drugs or alcohol. Fortunately, he still had sports on his side. Along with some natural talent and lots of hard work, he earned a scholarship to play college football. It turned out that I was accepted to the same university. There weren't many people from our high school that went to ASU that year, so our friendship drew us together, and it wasn't long before we were a couple. While we were in college, we did the same thing many other college students did. We studied and went to class during the week, but we couldn't wait to get to the parties on the weekend. We had a few arguments about drinking and drugs, but I was still in denial that he had a problem. I think he was starting to figure it out, but wasn't ready to face his demons. Not long after we graduated, we got engaged, and I remember his mother told me, she said, don't you think for a minute that marriage is going to change Mike Roberts. And I knew she was talking about his addiction. You probably don't remember that. And it really scared me, but not enough to call off our engagement. I was determined to marry my best friend. Shortly after we were married, I expected things to change, even though I had been warned that they wouldn't. I thought we would be like most married couples. After you get married, things would start to settle down, which means less partying and more time to concentrate on our marriage. I was constantly asking if we could do something, anything, without drinking. The answer was always a resounding no. It wasn't long before the arguments started, and they continued to increase in frequency and intensity. I finally started to realize that Michael needed help. Fortunately, a really close family member encouraged him to attend a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. In October of 1987, he picked up his white chip and never used again. Being clean and sober allowed him to become a better husband, father, brother, son, friend, and eventually probation officer. When Michael went to work for state probation, he started seeing his clients at NA meetings. This made him feel very uncomfortable, and fearing for his anonymity and the loss of his job, he refrained from attending NA meetings. This was difficult, but the 12 steps were always on his mind. He used his experience with NA to help many of his clients. Later, he became the drug and alcohol treatment specialist for the federal office in Greenville. It wasn't uncommon for him to stop what he was doing to provide assistance to other officers so they could help a client with a substance abuse problem. Although Michael's work was very fulfilling, this wasn't enough to feed his addictive personality. He needed to participate in some type of sport. As he once wrote, sport is at my core. It's how I survive and make sense of the world. Not long after we were married, he started training for running races. Within a few years, he was training for his first triathlon. After many years of running, he was forced to give it up due to severe knee and hip pain. At this point, he turned to the bike as his main source of physical activity. The bike became his drug of choice. Without it, there would have been no sanity in his life. It too allowed him to become a better husband, father, brother, son, friend, and probation officer. If Michael had spoken today, I'm sure his words would be very different than mine. Because we all know that he kept so many things to himself. But I do know that he understood the struggles of addiction, and he did what he could to offer people a chance at recovery. He brought many people to Turning Point, and not just those on his caseload. I can't tell you how many friends and family members called Michael for advice for their loved ones. He always knew the right thing to say and offered his assistance to do whatever he could for the addict and the family. I recently received an email from a very good friend. Michael had sent an email to her when he was trying to help her niece. I'd like to read it so you can see how much he loved helping others. I've been busy at work because I was sick over the holidays and then took a week's vacation at the first of the month. So when Peg asked me about treatment recommendations, I may have seemed a little brief. I am never caught up at work. I do see the daylight now, so my schedule will be very flexible for the most part. I just wanted to emphasize my willingness to assist in any way that I can. I have tons of personal, family, and work experience in this area, and I should be able to save you all some time, money, and potential frustration. If your sister decides to call me, that would be great, as I could get a better sense of how to assist. I could also do an initial assessment and recommendation for her. It is my belief that professional counseling with 12-step participation is always best. This issue and a chance to help family, friends, or strangers is my passion. Please know all information is strictly confidential. She is lucky to have a loving, supportive family, and I'm glad she seems willing to make a lifestyle change. Feel free to call me at any point in the process. I will assist any way I can. This email sums up exactly how willing Michael was to help anyone dealing with the difficulties of substance abuse. He truly believed in paying it forward. So many people helped him when he was getting clean, so he understood the importance and significance of a place like Turning Point. It has the ability to help men, just like Michael, become better husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, friends, and who knows, maybe even probation officers. Thank you all so very much for coming. Brentley, Maxton, and I appreciate your continued love and support.
Next, I'd like to bring up Chris Ayoff. He is our Director of Operations and Facility Senior Director here at Turning Point, and a good friend of mine.
Thank you guys for coming. I got a couple of quick, short stories I'm going to tell you. First, my name is Chris Ayoff, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is 5/21/2007. I came to the Turning Point as a working man, went out in the field and worked just like the guys that come here. It was not my first go-round at Turning Point. I had been here twice before. I started out as a driver when I worked for Turning Point in the beginning, and I worked my way up into a position where I was helping fill the beds here at Turning Point, and that's when I started working with Mike. Mike and David used to come out together, and then when they would recommend somebody to come out, you didn't know which one was going to show up or if they were both going to show up together, and you could never tell which one was going to be good cop, bad cop, because they both were capable of both. Mike, I could tell in the beginning that Mike had a soft spot for his guys. He wasn't like a normal or some of the other agents that I had worked with in the past. And it took him a long time to tell me that he was sober. He helped me on my personal journey. But we had a guy that came to Turning Point that suffered from grave emotional and mental disorders. He had a really, really rough childhood. Some really abusive stuff in his family. And Mike and David together and some other guys secured some funding to pay for guys coming to Turning Point that couldn't pay, that couldn't work. And this guy was one of those guys that he couldn't make it on the outside. He couldn't hold down a job. He couldn't stay sober. And Mike worked with this guy day in and day out. This guy would call Mike. He was scared to death of me. He'd call Mike and he'd say, "Chris is after me. He's trying to put me out. He's going to kick me out." And Mike would say, "No, no, no, he's not mad at you." And you'd ask the guy how he's doing. He'd say, "I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed." That was always his answer. The guy was stressed. And he relapsed here. And Mike took him somewhere safe for a week or two. We couldn't just take him back. We have a 45-day rule here. If you relapse, you got to go and you can't come back. We bend that rule a little bit. And there has to be some consequences of using. We can't just let you stay. And so Mike took this guy and put him up in a motel and went by and checked on him for a week and a half, whatever it was, and the guy came back. Well, I got a little dog, and the guy had been here for a little while. Mike had been working with him, trying to, take him to the doctor and, trying to work with him on his nerves and stuff. And one night about 10:30, I come around the back side of the building, and I'm carrying my little dog, and the hair stands up. It was a little chihuahua, and the hair stands up on the back of her neck, and she starts growling, and I see this shadow coming around the corner. And it's scary up here at night. It's dark. And I come around the corner, and there's Mike with his dog at 10:30 at night with this guy and and Mike has brought his dog over to see if the guy will respond to the pet. And I was just flabbergasted. After Mike passed, I found out David had went and talked to this guy and asked him, you know, and was telling him about Mike's passing. And he said, "How's Peggy doing?" And David said, "How did you know Peggy?" And he said, "Mike had me at his house." so here's this guy that, you know, I mean, that's just Mike, you know what I mean? He takes this guy that's struggling with emotional and mental disorders, and he takes him around his family. I mean, the guy was harmless, but these guys force people to come here. Mike helped people to come to Turning Point. He recommended family and friends, and a lot of time that would blow up in his face. And I remember one instance where he had helped a friend of the family get their son in here, and the son didn't want to do right. He wasn't ready, and it caused a bunch of problems between Mike and the friend of the family, or whatever the deal was. The guy told a bunch of lies about his stay here at Turning Point, and Mike come to me and he said, "You know, I'm just going to quit recommending this. I'm not going to do it anymore." And about a day or two went by, and he called me on the phone and he said, "You know what? I'm not. I'm going to continue to recommend." I've got a guy here. There's several guys here today that were forced to come here at one point in time. There's one here in the audience that the guy was forced to come here by federal probation. I don't think he was Mike's. I don't think Mike oversaw him. I think David did, but both of them helped with this guy. He came here, he didn't want to be here, he did what he had to do, he got out of here, he messed up, he went back in front of the judge after he got out of jail. The judge told him, "You go back to Turning Point and do 36 months at Turning Point, that'll finish out your paper, you'll be done." The guy called me on the phone, he said, "The judge sends me to Turning Point." I said, "Okay." He said, "I might show up." I said, "Well, call me when you get out of jail." And he did. He called me when he got out of jail. And the reason I'm telling you that guy came back on his own. See, we plant a seed. And Mike did that. He plants a seed with a person. And it might not take this time. It might take next time. That guy's came back to Turning Point. He's graduated our program. He's moved back in with his wife. Things are going good for him. Him and her both have a car now. And he's working for us back at the facility, bringing in 12-step meetings for our residents. If they hadn't have made him come here, he wouldn't be here today. So there's another guy here in kind of the same shape that Mike gave him break after break after break, and instead of putting him in jail, what some people would have done is they would have just gassed the bus up and put him in prison. He was a special man to us, no doubt, and I thank you guys for coming out. I thank everybody that donated. We've got 32 beds that we didn't have because of this. 32 men will have a chance like I did when I got here to get sober that wouldn't have had the chance if it wasn't for Mike. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Next, I want to bring up Jordan Wright, our Development Director.
I realize I got a camera on me, so I guess I can't roam around as much as I like, but I was hired onto this organization 5.5 years ago for my strongest asset and also my biggest problem. It's the fact that I can't keep my mouth shut. So I tend to be a pretty loud individual, and microphones just make that worse. In any event, what I just wanted to let you folks know is what this organization does in some detail. We house 170 people who are recovering from drug and alcohol addiction here. It was 148 not very long ago. When we built this building and completed it 2.5 years ago, it allowed us to open up 4 more rooms and add 8 more beds. We thought that that would accommodate our needs, but we were dead wrong. We filled those beds instantly and had a wait list after that. So it became clear that we had to open up more beds. What makes us unique, though, what makes our approach a little different, is the fact that we feel that folks cannot recover from addiction unless they have financial stability and accountability and responsibility. And you simply can't do that without a job. So we place these folks in jobs. We have relationships with a number of employment agencies throughout the area, along with some very generous employers who hire from us directly. And then we transport these folks to work every day. So we are taking 170 people to work 6 days a week, all 3 shifts. It's quite an operation. I know that I certainly couldn't handle or manage that. I don't have the patience for it. Thank you, Chris, for everything you do in keeping this place running smoothly. So aside from that, these folks are also in mandatory 12-step meetings every single day. And that's what this organization was about for a very long time. As Rick told me one time, this organization was about beds and jobs and meetings, which is a wonderful foundation. But we also felt that we needed to expand a bit beyond that and start offering other services as well, which is one of the reasons why we built this place. Not only because we needed room for the meetings, but also for the various classes that we wanted to start offering to the residents. So now we have financial planning courses offered through 3 of our banking sponsors to teach folks how to manage their money, how to fix their credit, how to balance their checkbooks, how to get a checking account. Many of them never had one before. So we're doing that. We also have job training coming in. We have South Carolina Voc Rehab in here twice a week. We collaborate with other organizations such as SAMHSA, and we now have nearly all of our employees trained as addiction coaches. And these folks are helping our residents on a more therapeutic level than the average 12-step meeting does. So we have really broadened the scope of services that we have available that's done through this building. But most importantly, it is still about the beds and the jobs and the meetings. That being the case, opening up more beds has been key. So Lawrence came to me, and she was looking for an organization to support and to fundraise for, and ours was one of the organizations that she had in mind. Gave her a tour. She did not tell me who in whose memory this was for. And I had my suspicions, but nevertheless I didn't ask any questions. Showed them around, and then she told me, and she said, what would it take for us to be able to open up a wing of this facility in Mike's memory? And I told her $50,000. This organization almost never gets individual donations. We raise our money from corporate sponsors and from foundations. I thought $50,000 was going to be a tough target if we could hit it at all. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, if we get somewhere close to that, I'll be satisfied with that, and we can do it, certainly in Mike's memory. We actually have, as of today, hit $57,750 for this, on top of a $50,000 grant for our Plus 60 project. So we are nearly at $110,000 for this program. I know that many of you in the audience have made this possible. To all of you, I say thank you very much. One person in particular donated $20,000 on her own. I'm not going to point that person out, nevertheless. This has been a very, very moving thing for us. And yet, just as what happened when we opened up the beds, when we opened this place, we have filled those 32 beds up. It's just so devastating, the need in this community. It has such an impact on you to know how many people need help. We have more beds for men in recovery than any other organization in the upstate. I believe any other organization in the entire state. And yet still it's not enough. The remainder of Building 3 will be 28 more beds. And so we are seeking additional support. Those of you who have already given, you've done enough as far as I'm concerned. But nevertheless, if anyone else is able to contribute further, because currently we've exhausted our resources on the Plus 60 program. Given its name, Plus 60, we're trying to add 60 beds, and we've added 32. So we're more than halfway there. But any support at all would be deeply appreciated. If I may add one more thing. One thing that for good reasons and bad has diverted the majority of our fundraising, and that's to our effort to house women at a place called Harmony House. Some of you may have heard of this. I think Mike when we cut the ribbon for this place, I think it would warm Mike's heart to know that we've been able to do this. Because there are 400 beds, folks, in this area for men in recovery. And there are still only 50 for women. 50. So consequently, women who are coming out of detox facilities or coming out of battered women's shelters and they have addiction problems, they have no money, no job, no transportation, no place to live, what are they supposed to do? So all too frequently what they're doing is they're shacking up with some guy who's a predatory male, a guy who's using drugs. And it's not just a recipe for failure, it's a recipe for death. Female addicts are 25% more likely to die than their male counterparts, and they're 5 times more likely to die than the average woman. It's that lethal. And it has just been woefully neglected in this community, and we have to do something about it. And I'm very happy to tell you that we have raised $600,000 for this particular program, and we are going to be opening up Harmony House before the end of this year, adding 26 additional beds. Not enough to solve the problem, but at least it's a start, and they'll get everything that the men get. And so we're very excited about that. As I say, it's been a wonderful thing, but it's also made it to where fundraising for this location, we haven't been able to focus all of our efforts here because there are other folks who really desperately need our help. So that being the case, once again, thank you for everything that you folks have done to support this effort. Because frankly, without it, we would have had to focus all of our efforts on Harmony House, and none of those rooms would have been open. So thank you so much.
I think I'll forward go the microphone as well. When my father and I founded Turning Point back in '95, for me it was a part-time thing. For him it was his life. We've made many friends over the years, but none have touched us the way Big Mikey touched us. I'm fully overwhelmed by what has happened here. Knowing that Mike wanted so much for Turning Point to succeed, and now through him you've expanded and are able to help so many more men. It's very touching. So thank you all. And now I think it's time for us to go down and take a look at the building and dedicate it to Mike. So if we'll all walk down to the right building.
Put your hand like this.
Okay, I don't have my glasses on.
It doesn't matter.
That button right there.
Yeah. Oh, it's on record now.
Yeah, you can get inside. David first, then. Very good. All right. No. I will say
Spoken enough.
this part wasn't rehearsed. Okay. Well, this is used to be called Building 3. It is now the Mike Roberts building. See, we've done great work here. Laid the wall. Hereby dedicate this building to Mike Roberts. Come down nicely. In memory of Big Mike Roberts, beloved husband, father,